Should NFTs be regulated?
So, the topic of the day, as I take my seat for this panel that we have, is should NFTs be regulated? It's a very big area, and the reason you have all been assembled, like the Avengers, is because I think you're all going to have very different thoughts and feelings on it, and I love that. So what I want you all to do, and we are going to go down the line, I want you to introduce yourself, but limit it to 60 seconds just because of time. And then I'm going to pose the first question. So Anton, if you'd like to kick us off with an introduction of yourself, please. Who you are and what you do.
Hello. Thank you everyone for being here this morning. Thank you, Cal, for introducing all of us. And thank you for the panelists for being here with such energy. I'm from Lebanon, I'm from Beirut. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of the Lebanon Law Review. We're a publication on a mission to enlighten, reform, and inspire the legal community through academic research. But we also have a market side to us. We also have a real down-to-earth market approach. And that's why we also have 𝐒𝐿, a legal tech startup that champions justice by digitizing and minimizing the pain points between people and their legal services. So I hope you enjoy this panel, and I'd like to know more about Amrita.
There's a bit of an echo, actually. So, Kyle, sorry, are we just introducing ourselves because I couldn't hear you?
Yeah. Give us a 60-second introduction of yourself, who you are, what you do.
Yeah,
I know you don't need to do it, but...
Well, yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Amrita Sethi, and I'm the first NFT artist in the UAE. I'm the creator of my own art genre, which I call sound bites, but I use a lot of sound story technology in my artwork, as well as augmented reality, virtual reality, and I've created other collections all based on sound, such as the Alpha Bites, the Crystal Bites, and I believe very much in infusing human consciousness into technology, as well as being able to tell people stories.
Good morning. My name is Karan Gandhi. I'm a senior investment associate at a Dubai-based blockchain fund, Cypher Capital. We're a multi-strategy agnostic fund investing in every segment on infra, consumer tech, and middleware. And I'm going to talk more about what we think on NFTs and regulation from a VC perspective. Great to be here. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Tim Mangnall. I'm the CEO of Capital Block. We're a Web3 sports agency that represent Cristiano Ronaldo, McLaren Racing. We were one of the first agencies to ever launch an NFT collection for football clubs across Europe. So we help them build their strategy, creative, look at regulatory legal framework, and then launch it into market.
Outstanding. So, as you can see from those very quick introductions, which, by the way, is the tip of the iceberg for all of these rock stars up here, this is a great panel to be discussing should NFTs be regulated. Now, guys, rather than just throwing the question at you and letting you talk about it, because that would just be insane, let's kind of pick this apart a little bit. So you all interact with NFTs in very different ways, and that's why you're so fantastic at this. Now, I think what I'd love for you all to do is, first of all, just give me a segment on not if you think NFTs should be regulated, because we'll conclude with that, but what you think has been the biggest challenge facing NFTs within the last 12 months. Because in order to understand how something should be regulated, you need to understand the challenges it's gone through. So, Tim, we're going to kick off with you first, and we'll work our way back down the line.
So I think the biggest problem for NFTs, from my perspective, is the success that they've actually had in the last bull market. We look at the likes of 𝐒𝐿, we look at the likes of Punks, and the huge success and the huge global press that they had. So everyone assumes that you can buy a monkey for $100 and it's going to go to $1 million or whatever it may be. And then from a sports perspective, people looked at that and they all jumped on that bandwagon and said, we're going to launch an NFT and we're going to make hundreds of millions of dollars from it, and everyone who buys one is going to make a huge amount of money as well. And it just fundamentally isn't the case, because when you look at a sports audience or an entertainment audience, they are very different to the niche of the people that were buying a CryptoPunk or a Bored Ape Yacht Club. So for me, fundamentally, the biggest problem was that the success that they had, and then sports clubs or entertainments or brands or whoever looking at it from a revenue generating perspective and saying, we're going to launch it in exactly the same way that Punks and Apes and Moonbirds or whoever launched it. So I think we need to look at it in a completely different segment. We need to look at NFTs as an opportunity to engage with customers, and there's multiple different segments in it. So actually for me, from my business perspective, success has been the biggest issue for sports fans and sports clubs over the last 12 months.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I think from a VC angle, what we look at mainly is that NFTs is like a great way to bring adoption. And generally, as Tim mentioned, I think that's one of the other challenges also, that we are in a very speculative market. Whenever someone wants to end up buying an NFT, they're thinking in the same mindset that, hey, I'll buy it for $100 right now, and it's going to be, say, 10x in the next 5 days. So there's a huge speculation factor in NFTs today, and I think the big challenge that I feel today, which is stopping it for getting a major success, is the utility aspect. A lot of projects that are trying to build something related to NFTs would have some sort of utility that they want to do. Like, it could be a marketplace that want to allow trading of NFTs, or it could be a real-world asset project that wants to use NFT as a tool for being able to give ownership of a real-world asset, right? But where we get stuck is mostly on the aspect of, things are, how do you drive that utility? There is no sort of clear path for regulation. There's no clear path for licensing. And even if I end up getting licensing in a specific jurisdiction, tomorrow there's something else, and then things just go haywire. So from an investment perspective, that's what we feel as a challenge, that NFTs are great. Okay, there's a lot of speculation. Fine, this happens in an early stage, kind of very early market, but eventually utilities needs to be somehow being driven through some sort of regulation, licensing, or anything else. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great points. Amrita?
Oh my God, I face so many issues. I think we could be here for like days, okay? But I think let's just start with like the first one, or I mean, it's just definitely not in priority. But okay, so NFTs have started off as one thing from an art perspective, and then they went into these 10,000 NFT kind of, token, almost like stocks and shares, right? So obviously I'm an ex-banker, and I could actually very much see it went from being all about the art to being able to how you can trade these tokens, which are unregulated, just like stocks and shares. And so, but then they're still plying over a veneer of art, whether it's like a Bored Ape Yacht or a unicorn or a potato, whatever it is, it's still being called art. And so as an artist who actually creates art, there's this kind of weird thing that came about, that every time I did a collection, I had to launch a 10,000 NFT collection. And as an artist, if you then want to do a generative collection, well, a small generative collection isn't good enough, because guess what? It doesn't provide the liquidity for you to trade like an NFT platform. And so as an artist, I just want to be able to produce art as my creativity comes and put it out there, and not wanting to have a 10,000 NFT collection that's got all of these utilities that go with it each time I produce an idea. And so how do you then kind of monitor that, right? And then even if you then say, okay, fine, as an NFT artist, I want to produce a collection of 10,000 NFTs, you then start to think about, okay, which platform do I use? How do I, if I want to be really creative, if I want to add interesting utilities, say even if I do want to go down that route, how do I then, which NFT platform do I use? Do I use my own smart contract? If I use my own smart contract as an artist, I need to get an external tech team. Then here today, gone tomorrow. in this kind of world, right? And so as an artist, that's happened with me, where I've gone down one smart contract with a company, they went bankrupt because it's still bleeding edge, or you're very quickly, like the tech has moved on so quickly that you're kind of left behind already on that NFT collection. And so, you know, it becomes extremely complicated to think about how you want to do that. Then the final point is then, you know, education and sort of mass adoption. And so, again, as an NFT artist, you're having to just focus on selling your NFTs to the people who understand it. But it's a very small pool of people. And the minute you go out to the masses, they've been burnt so much because of the unregulated NFTs of the pump and dumps that they're scared to get into it. So you have to still teach them, you know, what is the difference between a custodial wallet and a non-custodial wallet. You have to help and protect the consumers between, okay, again, your NFT is placed here, but where is it on the cloud? Because again, your image can just disappear if it's on a server with an NFT platform that might be gone again tomorrow. So, I mean, that's only just a few of the challenges that I faced.
Awesome.
I think NFTs face one problem. It's one word: perception. That is the main problem NFTs have been facing from the moment they've been incepted up to this day. We have problems in the general market, but also in the Web3 community, of differentiating between the technology and the use case or the underlying asset. We tend to conflate NFTs with simply art or simply community tokens for you to join a community and for you to be a part of something. The reality is, an NFT from a legal perspective is the biggest instrumental revolution in the past 100 years minimum. It allows you to own a unique digital asset and prove your ownership to everyone. And that is transferable to every single asset, not just the art. And I think one of the main problems is people still associate NFTs with bored apes and with monkeys and with all those yachts and with all those pieces of art that, although they are pretty beautiful and sometimes very valuable, there is much more value to be had when you use NFTs on other forms of intellectual property, or by using NFTs to represent real-world assets. What's stopping us from using NFTs as title deeds for real estate, for example, and then you sell and buy and do all these transactions on real estate via the use of NFTs? Now, maybe that needs a bit of regulation, but I think that's the main problem with NFTs. We're still in the very early phase where the early adopters are artists and dreamers and people who have a grand vision, and that has sort of limited so far how we use NFTs, where I think the future is all for NFTs, but only 1% of that is going to be art.
Yeah, guys, great answers. And what I love about this panel is you're all looking at it from very different ways. So it's really cool to see that dynamic. Let's flip the question slightly. We've spoken about what are the challenges that NFTs face, right? But let's take it from a consumer perspective. Let's look at it from somebody who actually uses NFTs on the flip side. Because where we use it, as lawyers, we use this term. Where there's one R, there's another R. Where there's regulation, there has to be risk. So what are, in your opinions, the biggest risks to users? And Amrita, I know you covered off a lot of this, but think more from a user perspective rather than a creator perspective. If I'm buying and I'm using and I'm doing whatever with my NFTs, what are my risks? And what do you think? Amrita, I'm going to kick off with you again, because I think you kind of touched on this, and let's keep that going.
Yeah, I think from the consumer perspective, firstly, it's like, you know, what, if I am now going to buy an NFT, like what am I buying an NFT? And I'm talking now from an artist perspective. Absolutely, you can use NFTs for totally different things. So you're then saying, okay, but so what do I, if I want to buy an NFT, but so you have this whole thing of custodial wallets versus non-custodial. And from a consumer benefit, they kind of feel a little bit secure if it's a custodial wallet. So because they can, they can go to, especially if they know the NFT platform owner or whoever the case is, and they're used to this kind of username and password. But the risk of obviously something like that is that they're compromising on the tech. Again, these NFT platforms, as I said, they're here today, but we don't know if they're going to be gone tomorrow, right? So then where does that NFT sit? And then how, say a lot of them don't necessarily have that interoperability to another thing, to another platform, and maybe those NFTs might just disappear altogether. But some of the consumers, they don't even know that, but they do it because it's easy, because they can pay with fiat and they can do their username and password. So they're compromising on, the tech to feel a little bit more secure. Then if you go with a custodial, like a non-custodial wallet, where you own the NFT yourself, the problem then becomes all the risk then sits on you. And then you have to do you need to learn a lot about hot wallets, cold wallets, ledgers, how to store that, where to store your NFTs. You don't just buy the NFT and just like let it sit around on a wallet. And so you're at risk of obviously you losing that as well. So that's just one example, I would say, from a consumer perspective. And then the last point is, if your NFTs do get stolen from your wallet, who do you go to? I've been hacked. My wallet, I've lost some very valuable NFTs, and it's happened to the most expert people in the industries. It's almost like if you haven't been hacked, it's like you've not been in the industry long enough. But then who do you go to? Like, you have to, report it to the police. I've done all of that, and it's a very clunky process, and you have to spend hours explaining to the police what an NFT is. And so there's just no regulation, and there's no consistency across and understanding across countries as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Tim, I'm going to pick on you next, if I may.
I think the risk, it depends what NFT you're buying, and I completely agree with everything that's just been said, but the type of NFTs depends on the segment that you're talking about. So from a sports perspective and an entertainment perspective, the biggest risk that I actually see with someone buying an NFT, because we try not to focus on a revenue element and it's about fan engagement, it's about building community, is actually then them buying it and then there's no communication after. They're just sitting there going, what is this? Like, what do I have now? And I think that's really, really bad for the industry, because a lot of these clubs, a lot of these entertainers, a lot of the brands, they launch an NFT because they think they're going to get people to buy it based on the hype. You buy it and then there's very little communication, or they don't quite understand how to use it, how to move it around, the benefits, how to engage with that. So one of the biggest risks is actually a really bad PR position for NFTs. And I've said it on previous conferences and previous events that actually the word NFT, I don't think should be used around sports. I think it needs a really good PR agency to come in and rebrand it. So I think a real risk around launching an NFT is not necessarily on the consumer. And I'm talking from my industry and what I do and what I understand, which is very heavily in sports. But the biggest risk to launching an NFT is actually the repercussions on the brand that is then launching it, because you have one opportunity to engage with that customer and then they can buy it. And then if they go, okay, well, I've bought this image, be it for $1,000, be it for $10, whatever it may be, and then nothing happens from it, it just leaves a consumer feeling, well, this is a waste of time, and there's a really, really bad knock-on effect around that. So it's not necessarily the risk from that fan perspective, because it should be quite a simple process if you use it in the right way, and if it's all going to be around engagement and content and how do you get closer to that sports club that you love. The risk for me is much more on the brand, the person, the football club, the F1 team. That's the risk of launching an NFT.
Yeah. Karan, maybe you want to pick up from there?
Yeah, I think I'll keep it short. A lot of great points on that perspective on security and non-custodial, and also on the communication side. I think another thing that I see is important is also first things that there's a lot of lack of education. People don't know what are they buying. Today, NFT buying is more of a shopping experience. It's like an eBay experience, right? But in the end, like you don't even know that if the collection that you're trying to buy, is it authentic? Is it copyright free? Or someone would just copied it and just uploaded on a new smart contract and is selling you a new collection. So all those risks are still there. But I think that these are like short-term risks that will be solved by new startups that are building in this space. Like one crazy example here is that when you end up having a non-custodial experience on OpenSea and you want to buy an NFT, whenever you sign your MetaMask, there's this weird hash transaction message that comes through, and no one understands that. Everyone assumes there's some techie thing going on. So there's this company called Fire, which is trying to solve that by just giving you a dashboard saying that, hey, you're buying this NFT, and once you give this much of ETH, this is the amount, this is what you're going to get in return. So there are startups that are trying to solve that, but I think these are all short-term risk, and we're still in the wild west of development and innovation, so we'll get there soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Anton?
I definitely agree with especially Amrita. One of the biggest issues people face when adopting NFTs is longevity of the project. Is this someone I can believe in, that I want to buy into, even at ludicrously high amounts of money? And will this keep on giving me value over time? And will they pull the plug at some point? So there's always that question. And I think that's inevitable in a market that's barely 5-10 years old. I think that's something that people are just going to have to accept, because no one in the market yet has that sort of credibility of 10, 15, 20, 100 years. No one's institutionalized anything yet. But another major issue, which you really touched on, and I really agree with, is ease of access. It's very difficult to buy an NFT and to engage on it, because first you have to be connected to the internet, have to have the sufficient education, there's no one to guide you, and you need to go through all the steps of buying a Bitcoin or buying the cryptocurrency and then buying the NFT and then storing it and then doing all those things. I think that is something that for people who are technologically enabled, we take it for granted. We take it for granted how easy it is. I think if you really want to know how hard it is, go to any village anywhere in the world and see how people struggle to maybe send an email. And that will really put things into perspective. Tech should be easy, it should be for people. And I think for NFTs to see true mass adoption, it needs to be really easy to get into.
Absolutely. So, with our last 29 seconds, and I'm going to steal a little more time because I don't care, it's my segment. Let's ask the question from your own personal perspective. And I want a good yes, no, maybe answer with a clarifying statement. Should NFTs be regulated? Anton, we're going to kick off with you and work down. Yeah, please.
I don't think NFTs should be regulated because NFT is a technology. You don't regulate technology because then you stifle innovation. What you should do is regulate the asset. If you're trading in a regulated asset that is regulated in Web 2, then it should be regulated in Web 3. Real estate, for example, regulated. If it happens to be traded via NFTs, it needs to be regulated as well. Art, it's not regulated in real life. Why regulate it in NFT world, right? So don't stifle technology, because if you put policies that regulate technology, you're saying this is the best technology for the next 50, 100 years, and we're not going to think of something better. And some tech guy who's really smart is going to prove you wrong. And then you just stifled his innovation because you regulated things. So regulate NFTs, no. Regulate assets, yes.
Wow, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I completely agree with him. And I'll just, just kind of make one final point. Exactly. How regulated is traditional art? And for me, an NFT is just another medium of an art piece. So when I create something, you have an NFT, a physical artwork. I can make it into a mural, a sculpture. So for me, it's just another medium that I have to offer.
Yeah, I think I agree on the same points, that if it's a PFP or a digital art and it's a collectible, then it should not be regulated. But when you attach utility to an NFT, and in some form which is IP related, I think you need some sort of regulation there, and my overall answer is yes. And I'll give a very specific 10-second example, and this is true story. There's a bunch of crypto dudes, let's call them, bought up more than 30 Bored Apes in Europe and ended up lending that IP to a couple of restaurant chains and merchandisers. And in like 7 days, they collected a lot of capital and ended up reselling that on OpenSea. And then who owns that IP now? Like, does the new owner get the revenue share of the IP distribution, or what the merchandise revenue, or the first group that actually originally owned it? So I think when you attach utility to something, there has to be some sort of regulation. And to Anton's point that it kind of stifles innovation, but I think it also builds trust. If you have regulation with real world assets and everything, you have a more trusted economy, and people will be much more excited to probably purchase a property with an NFT in the future.
Awesome. And we've got to wrap up, but Tim, I'm keen for you to have a last voice. So hit us with a nugget in 15 seconds or less. Just a yes, no, maybe, and why.
I'd just say a maybe. I think some sectors should. I think some sectors shouldn't. I think if it's very much on financial premise that you're buying it, you potentially should look at regulation. But if you're focusing on art, sports, engagement, then I don't think you should.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Guys, I want to thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us who took the time to... Let's give our panel a fantastic round of applause.